Hello, everybody. My name is Paxton, and I teach photo composition, how to improve photos by framing them properly. In the process, you listen to what my thinking is. This is very simple stuff. Like anybody could learn this and apply it. This is like basic grammar for photography. And you could go through your camera roll, your albums and your photos and improve them dramatically just by following the same logic I do. And you might come up with your own logic, your own ideas, which is great. But I just explain each photo in how the eye works and travels through it and what you should do to make it better. So, as you know, there's always a story, and that's what we want. And we want to remove the things that are not the story. We don't want to have a lot of options for the viewer. We want to make it very clear and succinct about what we want them to look at. And you get to decide whatever the story you want is. So in this photo, the story for me is this. I think this is really cool. We have a cool pattern of these terraces. You have arches, columns, and palm trees all the way down this street. With a beautiful sunset, you have these palm trees kind of bordering it, which make it really nice. And then you have this story here, which is totally independent. Although it's the same street, it's a family, or it's some people, at least. So these are two different stories. And they're not really in the same space because we have this big line of trees. There's no logical relation between them. So you got to figure out what story you want. I'm talking about this story here. So there's two things that are interesting in photos. There's three things. Well, there's probably more than that. But people are really interesting. We gravitate toward pictures of people and what people are doing. And then also what people have built or what people have done. These are interesting things to us because there's just some natural curiosity. What are the things that distract? You could say, okay, this road is distracting, okay? And why is that? It's not because it's flashing red like this thing is distracting, right? At some point, our eye is going to go to this stop sign and it adds no value to our story. This road is distracting just by virtue of the amount of space it covers in this picture. It's about the same, probably just a little bit less than this. If you were to add the square area of this and this, the road might be even more. In presenting something like that, that element has got some prominence. So we want to reduce that. And plus, it's incredibly boring. Cars are not helpful, but they're part of the scene. We could do nothing with them. These people are interesting. And this is the problem with the people in this one. If my story is these buildings and this streetscape, I'm going to end up looking here because people are interesting. And even though they're small and a little blurry and in the distance, you still want to look at them, see what on earth they're doing. And that's going to take us away from this. Let us get started. First of all, get rid of all that street. Not needed. I'm going to pull up to about here. And on the right-hand side, let's crop until I love on the right-hand side, this terrace and the shops there, but that red light has to go so we can get rid of it to about there. And now I have on the bottom right, that little corner, we're going to get rid of that. I'm just going to move. We don't want items in the corner that will pull our eye that way. On the left-hand side, there's a guy in a blue there at the bottom. Right there's about good. So we start off with a full arch and this pattern, that's good. On the top, the sky is not terribly interesting at the top. It's nothing much going on. On the left-hand side, I want to leave those two palm trees in their fullness there. On the right, we had to take some off to get rid of some of that sky. And again, the more space something has, the more prominent it is. And we're not taking a picture of the sky. The sky is the background image, and it's nice. It has some texture to it. But our focus is on this street. Leave it like that. I feel like there's two different photos here, one on the right and on the left of the column that holds up the street light. Tell you what we're going to do. Let's duplicate this and continue on. What I would do is let's get rid of this. Put it right about there. And to me, that is the photo. It's focused on this street. We're not looking anywhere else. We have the post that holds up the street lights and these signs. It kind of frames the streetscape by itself. It would be better if it wasn't there, but it does frame it in such a way that kind of contains our eye into that streetscape. Obviously, we could look above it, but it's just clouds. There's not a lot going on there. And all that detail captures our attention. We are curious about what's going on and all the shops and everything. And it just looks, with the vegetation, it looks like a nice place to be. Let's go back to the original. This is with the people in the picture, which I think this works. And this will be your style and your judgment. Some of these rules some of these things I talk about are pretty objective, hard to argue against, unless you're my son. He'll argue against everything. Or And some of them on the other end of the scale are very subjective, and they come from our very personal view of the world, how we see things, what we think is important, and how we want to how we communicate. So if you disagree with me, you'll probably get into more of your own style, which is fine, but there's still and that's good. You should develop your own style if you want to. But the point is when you come to a disagreement with how I'm cropping things, that's the point in which you probably are developing your own style, as opposed to the hard and fast rules. If you disagree with one of those, you're just a contrarian, and there's nothing we could do about that. Let's go back to the original. You could see how there's so much information here. This big road doesn't add any value. By virtue of all the big sky and the road and the stuff on the right, we lose what the story is, because there's so much other stuff to look at, and there's really no direction. We don't know what we're supposed to look at. There's no point to it. Come here, and it's much more defined. We know that the photographer wanted us to look at that street down there. And still, I think this one does a better job of making the viewer focus in on that street. You could also, if you want to get really crazy, let's pull this down a bit. And we'll lose those palm trees, because we don't necessarily need them up there. We still have the feel for it. I think actually that probably works a little bit better. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you learned something. Again, take what my thinking and apply it to your photos and see what you come up with. I bet you will start to see how you can improve your existing photos. And as you do that, you're training your brain to know what to look for when you take your next picture, and you could start off with a much better original photo. So thanks for watching. If you have any comments and suggestions, please put them below. And also, yes. So there's a little matter of liking and subscribing, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. That's your part of the puzzle. I used to tell my kid when I was raising them, we're in a family and everybody's got a role to play, and your role to play is to do your homework. Actually, I was like newly divorced, and he was like in sixth or seventh grade. He had his girlfriend, and like I couldn't get the time. I was probably 2-3 years divorced. I couldn't get the time of day from a woman, and I got to tell my son. I said, look, before you leave the house, comb your hair, brush your teeth, and put it on deodorant. And he had a girlfriend. Yeah, and I'm pretty put together. So, I don't know. Life is weird. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.